Alonzo, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
I'm good, Trey. I'm good. I'm taking a break from judging the Olympics to talk to you. There's some event I should be an expert. I love the Olympics because for 2 weeks we're all experts on everything. Now we're putting down our gymnastics and we're picking up track and field. So
I've been watching it with my kids for the very first time this Olympics. They're 9 and 7, almost 10 and 8, and they have also become experts in things like field hockey, which none of us had ever watched for a single second before the last 4 days. And now they know exactly what's happening between Australia and Spain, apparently.
yeah, it's the same thing. My sport like that is team handball, which I can watch all day and still have no idea what they're doing. But it's they're committed to it, so I'm all in.
Yeah, it's like a fusion of sports. It's like part basketball, part soccer, but you're using your hands, as the name would suggest. There's some other elements to it as well, I guess. But
How old did
ultimately,
you say your kids were?
10 and 8.
10 and 8. So it looks like if you gave them a ball and said, go play, that's what they would come up with. To me, that's team handball. You gave a bunch of kids a ball, and this is what they came up with. The competitions are too much fun. Watching Simone Biles, right? Watching the GOAT in real time. There aren't many athletes that do something where the judges just say, you know what? We're just going to name it after you. We're not going to score. We're just going to name it after you and we're going to move on. I mean, it's, her hair is messed up. Yeah, because she was flying. She was literally flying, and that will mess up your hair. No, man, I listen, some of it is funny. The Turkish shooter, yeah, there's nobody as cool as him. There's nobody as cool, and nobody will ask him how he learned to shoot like that, right? We're all afraid that he's a Turkish hitman. That's what everyone knows. We know that.
Yeah,
He's a
I
secret
mean,
agent. He's a
he's
spy.
yeah, he's gonna slink back into the shadows once the Olympics are over with and go back to professionally killing people.
Well, he probably doesn't even look like that. This is probably a disguise. You know how in Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise puts those masks on, like the mask is so good, he's a different person. Yeah, this guy, he's shorter than we see. He looks different. Yeah, it's not him.
Hey, so you're a basketball fan. Last time we talked, we joked about you being mistaken for Clippers players at times because you're like 6'3", 6'4", walking around LA, or used to walk around LA. We may have to talk about you making the move to Vegas before it's all said and done. What do you think about this year's men's U.S. Olympic basketball team versus that 1992 Dream Team? There's a fascinating debate going on right now between which is better. And obviously, it's hard to compare because they're completely different eras. If you had to take one team over the other, which would you go with?
Man, that's a tough one. Because I'm old school, as you said, I played for the '89 Clippers. I was there. No, man, it's tough, but I'm still gonna go with the original Dream Team. I'm gonna go with the original Dream Team. How do you match up, with Barkley? Um, the Admiral was on that team, right?
Oh, yeah.
Uh, so it's like, okay, so Patrick Ewing's hitting the bench. Now we're going to put in David Robinson. Like, what do you do against that? You know what I mean? This team, I love this team. And we're not going to get into the LeBron Jordan debate and stuff like that. And I love how KD seems to love this game, and steps up. But so I don't think it's the top tier superstars. I think that the dream team just kept coming at you. There was no, you have Scottie Pippen. You have just there were so many players on that, and the versatility of some of those players. Um, yeah, I don't know if you could beat that team. This team's a hell of a team. Make no mistake. This team is incredible, but with the bigs and also the physicality. Okay, the first dream team would have been a lot more physical than this team.
Yeah, because these guys wouldn't know how to deal with hand checks.
Right. Right. There are rules now. See,
Yeah.
back then, no, these arguments are always fun. And I do believe that the players today are more skilled. Like there wasn't a KD back then. There just wasn't a 7 foot guy with his skill set. That LeBron is, to me, he's a better Magic than Magic. And that's hard to say. But he's that I can play all five positions. And when you look at some of the passes he throws, I mean, it's unbelievable, how he threads the needle. And he threw a three-quarter court bounce pass in stride that was just like, how do you do that? And Magic's the only other person I ever saw do that. But LeBron is more athletic than Magic.
Yeah, he's got that explosiveness. Magic has more of that old man game. Even when he was a young guy, he had the world's best old man game. And Luka Doncic is kind of taking on that title now in the modern NBA. But you're right, LeBron, he's just got a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more explosiveness than Magic did. Plus, he's got the staying power too. And not just talking about Magic, but just about anybody else who's ever played the game. The fact that he is still playing at this level at his age is remarkable and is a testament to just how well he takes care of himself. I mean, it's akin to what
Well,
Tom Brady did in the NFL for so many years.
I'm a huge LeBron fan, and LeBron haters, to me, I don't even argue with them because their arguments are ridiculous. And Barkley famously said that Father Time is undefeated. Like, yeah, except for LeBron. Like now you have to put that on the end. Well, except for LeBron, because he's going to be doing this. I think the only guy who lasted as long as LeBron was Satchel Paige. Didn't they say Satchel Paige was like 60? Like no one knew how old he was. That's going to be LeBron. LeBron, we're looking at his grandkids playing with him. But
Wonder how much nepotism is going to be at play with the grandkids getting
and
drafted.
here's another thing. I have no problem with a father getting a son a job. All right. Like that's never been done before. Let me tell you something. Trey, the only thing I'm mad about is my dad was too lazy to get me in the NBA. All right. If he had stepped up his game, perhaps I could have gone pro. What it's so fun. This is why I laugh at the LeBron haters. Like, yeah, because no son of a player ever got into the league. If you think that that doesn't help, that your father was in the league in on so many levels, from the names, people knowing you, people watching you, coaching, whatever. Like, yeah, it's nepotism. Good for him. Good for him. One more guy won the birth lottery.
I'm just disappointed that any other team didn't care enough to try and lure LeBron to their team that they selected Bronny before the Lakers had a chance to do so in the second round. That's where it would have gotten
Right,
really.
right. It would have been a strategy.
Yeah.
And who knows what went on behind the scenes, but and I saw Bronny play. I went to summer league. He is so this is my assessment of summer league. I don't know if you've ever watched the games,
Mm-mm.
but there's always one or two guys you're like, yep, they're in the league. You could just see it. They're playing on a level above the others. Then the rest of them, you're like, they're good. I mean, they're good enough to be playing at this level. They're not standing out. And that's the way I put Bronny. He was good enough to be on the court. It wasn't like he didn't belong there. He wasn't the standout player, but he was good enough to be on the court. So who knows what happens? Does he go play with the Lakers? Does he play G League for a while? Here's my question about basketball. What is with our 3-on-3 team? Okay. What is these old guys who never made it? Like, hey, let's find some never was. At least we at least send has-beens?
Dude, I talked to Ice Cube about this last week, who's the co-founder of the Big Three, and he's upset. He says it's Adam Silver's pettiness that is keeping us from pulling from the greatest basketball talent pool on the planet. Adam Silver does not want NBA guys participating in 3v3. So instead, we get Jimmer Fredette and a bunch of scrubs not getting anywhere close to that medal stand.
Yeah, I read something about there's some kind of 3-on-3 competition that they had to earn points in to play in it. I don't understand. You say they don't want to send old play. Why not send three guys from the G League? That's who I would think. Send 5 G League players and let them, I don't know, make a name for themselves or try or anything. But these guys,
Well, the NBA tries really hard to screw up any free marketing it could possibly get. It's why it's started drafting too many guys based on potential back when the one and done rule went into effect and they were drafting high school guys ahead of that, obviously. Like you really it's taking a guess even with those lottery picks as to whether they're actually going to pan out. And it's a huge risk you're taking on a 19 or 20-year-old kid, paying him multi-million dollars per year on a pretty big what if. And the sad reality is I think that it's had an overall negative effect on the sport of basketball, both at the college and certainly the professional level too.
yeah, but it is what it is, right? I mean, it's the market. If it's easy to judge that, right? But if you're 19 or 20 years old and someone offers you $5 or $10 million, what are you going to say? Nah, I'm not ready yet. I mean, it's what, the thing about this, they create this market and then they complain about it, right? They bid these numbers up, they pay these salaries, and then they say it's too much. It's like, yeah, but you paid it. You know what I mean? Like it like in baseball, how many of these baseball players are in their late 20s and they give them 10-year, two, three, now even $400 million contracts? Well, when you're 36 to 39, you're not going to be able to hit like you used to. You're going to be getting paid a bunch of now. You're not going to be Bobby Bonilla, because let's be honest, that's the greatest contract in the history of contracts. But you're going to be paying a lot of players a lot of money who are going to be putting up at maybe average numbers at best. But it was the owners who decided, with their contracts were what, 3 to 5 years. And then I think it was A-Rod came along and they were like, we'll pay you for 10 years. Like, what? And then it went from there. So I don't know. Are these owners just rich guys whose egos get in the way and they start throwing out numbers and then you regret it?
Yeah, the ownership thing makes no sense at times. Like the Celtics just won a championship and their ownership group is looking to sell. Like they literally announced that a week after winning an NBA championship that they're looking to sell. And I guess the value of the franchise is going to be at its best at that point in time. But don't you want to try and follow that up with, I don't know, another championship, keep the team together, see what you can do for an encore? But that's apparently not the nature of the game in
Yeah,
modern
I
times.
will say this for the Celtics, with all these people spending all this money, Tatum and Brown were a good investment. Like if you're
Yeah.
going to pay max salaries, you got max performance out of your max salaries with those two. So I'll give them that. And trust me, I grew up in New York. It is hard to give any kudos to Boston. So let's move on.
So the obviously the biggest star of the 92 Dream Team was Michael Jordan. He is a big motorcycle guy. He's been around the world of motorcycle racing for a long time. You're also a motorcycle guy. I think you've said in a previous interview that the first vehicle you ever owned at the age of 18 was a motorcycle. Have you ever crossed paths with MJ?
Yes, I have. And it's a remarkable coincidence, moment, whatever, but it was really cool. So when he learned to ride, he got training from a motorcycle racer. And then he was like, oh, what's this about? And he bought a race team, because when you're Michael Jordan and you like racing, you just buy a team.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who worked for him. So there was a race at Laguna Seca, which is a historic racetrack in Monterey, California, and Michael was there and he set up his whole hospitality, like his own thing. He had a chef and a party and everything. And because my friend worked for the team, I was invited. So we're in there and Michael is there. And, I'm not, we didn't kick it, but I got to say hi. I got to talk. But what was really funny, him and his friends, Michael's a famous gambler, right? And they're betting on everything. They're betting who's going to be the first racer to this turn, who's going to crash, who's going to, and then it gets crazy. Who's going to be the first one to walk out of the pit, whatever, right? So me and my buddy, we were like, all right, keep your hands in your pocket, because I ain't accidentally betting $1,000 on something with Michael Jordan, But he was really into it, and in one of the all-time worst marketing moves ever. So at that time, it was called AMA Racing, the American Motorcycle Association. You have Michael Jordan. You have the at that time probably the biggest athlete in the world with the number one brand. I mean the logo, right? The logo's on everything. And I happen to have I got a race shirt from the team, which is one of my prized possessions. Really cool. You have all of that, and you can't figure out how to market it. It was like you wouldn't have to pay him because he liked doing it.
Yeah.
But what they did was, in racing, the manufacturers and the factory teams have certain parts and certain things on their bike that the lesser teams can't get. And somebody in their infinite wisdom wasn't letting Michael get the best stuff. So he was like, why am I competing if I can't win? If your bike is literally better than my bike that my guy's on, and I can't win. And then they had some kind of weird deal with the company making the racing gear wouldn't partner with Nike or vice versa. So they could, my friend was in this marketing. He's telling me, so they basically blew it. They had the biggest name. Can you imagine how many people would watch motorcycle racing or just buy the jacket? Or like, you didn't even have to have a motorcycle, like, oh, it's a Michael Jordan racing jacket. Got to buy that. So yeah, I don't know. But it was fun meeting him. And yeah, he's a bike guy. He's pretty cool with that.
We was also apparently he and his friends are like the two old guys in trading places, where they're just betting frivolous amounts on the most obscure things too, I guess.
Yeah, I think he could afford it. I'm gonna go with that. I think he had enough cash to but it was cool because it was like he was having fun. It wasn't, you know what I mean? He wasn't being Michael Jordan. Like you could kind of see, oh, this is what he does when he's having fun with his friends. And that was the vibe. The vibe was kind of like, don't bother him. You say hello, walking by, whatever, and he was cool, but it wasn't like, don't try to interview him. Don't try to become his best friend. No pictures. That was a big thing. Don't take pictures of him. Just let him be.
I can't even imagine what that level of fame is like, where it's literally anywhere you go.
Oh,
You
let me tell you what it's like.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me. No, you know what? I've always thought about that. And I've known a few people. I mean, not Jordan famous, but I've known people who are pretty famous. And
I mean, you're friends with Rogan. He's, obviously the guy who owns the club
yeah,
that you're working at this weekend. He's achieved a similar level of fame.
Joe is what I can say about Joe is the same guy he's always been with me. Like people have different opinions of him, this, that, whatever. I met Joe 20 years ago, 20 something years ago at the Laugh Factory. We did spots at the same, we knew each other as comics. We got to know each other. Same guy with me. So I don't I can't judge on that. But what I've found is when everyone in the world knows who you are, the nice thing is you usually have enough money to find privacy.
Mm.
There's times when you just got to get away. So you go on some vacation, you go some island. I hear these guys rent those, multi-million dollar yachts for a week, or you do something like that. Or the other thing is, if you're cool, like we were talking about Magic, back in the 80s when Magic was the man in LA, when LA was his town. Reason people were cool with Magic is he was cool with everybody.
Yeah.
He'd show up at pickup games. He'd be at a restaurant and he'd take pictures and he'd talk to people, and people liked him so that he could always say, "Hey man, I got to do this," and people would be like, "All right, leave him alone. Leave him." They respected that he gave some of his time, so they didn't want all of his time. So that I guess you figure out how to deal with it yourself. But I don't know what it's like to be that person that, no one can look directly at me. Like I always wondered, what day do you decide, okay, from now on, people can no longer look directly at me. They have to look through a pinhole in a box like it's an eclipse or something. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Just thinking about my personality as whatever I am right now, if I were that level of famous, I can see how easily I would get annoyed by constantly having to answer the same questions over and over again, or having people come up and asking for pictures. It's why when I hear about people like Magic, or I had a personal experience like this myself, I lived and worked in Chicago for WGN radio, and would get to hang around Ernie Banks from time to time, who is Mr. Cub, obviously one of the most famous people walking around the city of Chicago, always had people coming up to him. And I watched probably 20 examples of him taking the time to look whoever it was in the eyes and ask them questions about themselves, and take whatever picture they wanted taken and sign an autograph. And it's part of the reason why he was so beloved by that city at the end of the day, to go well beyond the amazing athletic feats on the field.
Yeah, I think some people realize it's part of the job. Now it's worse today because everyone has a camera, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has a camera in their pocket, so it's probably more difficult, but I still think you can navigate it. And it's one of those things that comes with the job, right? What do they say? Be careful what you ask for. So if you're that famous, if you're a movie star, if you're Denzel or Tom Cruise or LeBron or whoever, it might be Julia Roberts, whatever. I guess that comes with the job.
Well, I romanticize the idea of being a stand-up comedian, and it's probably awesome, a lot of the time. But there are also times where you're doing a weekend in, I don't know, Rockford, Illinois, where it's not all that glamorous, and the crowds aren't necessarily on point either, and it is little bit of a grind. But at the end of the day, you obviously love what you do for a living too.
Well, I always say it beats honest work, and I know because I've done honest work. Okay, yeah. Listen. I love stand up, and I think any comic will tell you. I'll tell you right now. They pay me to travel. I tell jokes for free. The work I do. I'm at the airport for the 6 a.m. flight, and then you know how flying is now. It's just abusive, right? And I tell them, like, I'm a platinum flyer and they treat me like crap. So I don't know what they're doing to group seven. I honestly don't know. I think they're just beating them with sticks or something like that. I don't, if you're in group eight and you have a carry-on bag, who are you fooling? What the hell is wrong with you? There's no room for you. You're in group eight. That's all part of the job. But when you get to the stage, even in the small clubs, small town, whatever, there's a freedom and a creativity on stage that I absolutely love. I think that's the drug. That's what I want to be up there doing. Something happened in the Olympics today. I can make fun of it tonight. Something happened in the news today. Something happened with me today. Whatever. I can joke about it tonight. That's that's what I love about it.
You aren't kidding about doing honest work back in the day. You spent much of the 1980s as an airplane mechanic for Lockheed Martin. Does it worry you at all to see our airplanes falling apart in 2024, Alonzo? Because I feel like these
No, but
airplanes.
it's funny you ask. I understand what the problem is, okay? Because yeah, there used to be the outside inspection, and then Boeing they outsourced their work and let the outsourced people inspect it themselves. You know what I mean? And one of the things that always made a difference was someone else was looking at it, right? So when you did something, someone else was checking it. So it had to be done right. And if it wasn't right, it'd be done over. And then, it's one more time where some bean counters want the bottom line. What's the profit? How can we do it cheaper? Let's outsource it. Let's just, yeah. Well, the quality dropped. And when you're building airplanes, you don't want to hear that the quality dropped. Boeing's in big trouble, as well they should be, and they got to clean it up. They got the whole thing with. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole business of it, but I'll just say certain things shouldn't be deregulated. Certain things, there's a reason for regulations. Yeah, building airplanes. Yeah, let's not deregulate building airplanes. How about we stay on top of that one?
Yeah, let's keep those checks and balances in place. We want somebody else checking that original person's work.
Right, right. That's, and that, I mean, that's a simple explanation, but that's what happened. The outsourcing, Boeing outsourced a lot of components, and apparently one of their little contractors said, this door doesn't have to lock. It can close, but there's no need to lock it.
Don't need to tighten these screws on this paneling here. If it blows off, a kid may lose its shirt, but otherwise everybody will stay relatively safe in the cabin.
Yeah, not good, not good.
Last thing now, I'm an old school Mavs fan. I've given up on the NBA at this point. It's just it's too contrived for me, unfortunately. Watching the 2006 finals where Dwayne Wade single-handedly outshoots the Mavs from the free throw line, it was just ridiculous to me. I've got better ways to spend my time. But as an old school Mavs fan, the Sacramento Kings and the Maloof brothers were my enemies back in the early 2000s. And you actually got fired by the Maloofs at the Palms Hotel in Vegas back in the day. Why exactly did they can you like that?
Look at you. Look at you deep diving on my history. I don't even know where you found this story. So yeah, so I was doing a show at the Palms, and this is back when what was it called? The Real World. That MTV show was huge, right? And it shot at the Palms. So the Palms is like the cool spot and this and that, and all the kids want to be there. Well, I'm not a kid, right? So I'm not of real world age. I'm like, good for you. I'm here to do a show. So I go to check in and they tell me we don't have a room. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a room? And they're like, we don't have a room. They're asking like, who am I? Right. So you know how behind the desk they have the TV screen showing so when my picture popped up, I was like, I'm him. See, that's me. And they were like, well, we can give you a room at the Rio. And I was like, I'm not working at the Rio. So anyway,
What a flex,
well,
by the way. I'm so happy that you got to flex like that. That's awesome.
so now so I go on the radio and I joke about it. And I said, I'm not going to mention the hotel name, but it's named after a tropical tree, right? So that's a whole funny thing, right? So I'm at the show and I open the show saying, hey, I almost wasn't here tonight because they didn't want to give me a room. And I start making fun of the situation. And then I was like, and by the way, I know the Maloofs own the Kings. Well, I'm from LA and I'm with and now I'm doing Clippers versus Kings jokes. And this is when the Kings really sucked. And so I finished the show and it was, I swear it was like old Vegas, like three guys in suits come up to me, three big guys. You have to leave the property. We have to escort you to your room. And I was like, okay, first of all, a couple of things I didn't respect. Old school Vegas, they would have taken me out to the parking lot. They would have given me a beating and brought me back for the second show. That's how you do things, right? They hit me where it doesn't show. They get up there and you respect the boss, right? I would have respected that. But what I didn't like was I left the hotel. I packed up and left. I had a second show and they told people I got sick or so. It's like, no, if you want to throw me out, man up and tell people, oh, he made fun of us and we couldn't handle it, so we got rid of that. I didn't respect that. And then I found out that the Maloofs were not well liked nor respected by Vegas. Vegas just didn't like them. So, it was
Oh,
one of those things. Like, and then they screwed another comic because he was from the same agency as me. And I'm like, really? Like, do you understand? He has nothing to do with me. We're just with the same age. Yeah, it was a bad thing, but I don't feel bad about what I did. And it was also hilarious. I had fun with it. But yeah, the Maloofs were idiots. It's thin-skinned. When you have people like that, right? If you're an owner of a team or whatever, you choose to be public. You know what I mean? Like I know Mark Cuban owns the Mavs. Well, not anymore, but Mark Cuban owned the Mavs because he was every. I don't know who owns the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't know who owns, I don't know who owns the Miami Heat. I know Pat Riley runs it. I don't know who owns, but so if you're an owner of an NBA franchise or anything like that, and you choose to be public, now you're a public figure, and people are going to make fun of you, and you're going to deal with being a public figure. That, and there are certain owners and executives that want that, and then there's others that don't. So I got, screw them. I got a laugh out of it. Thank you for deep diving and finding that story. Yeah, that
you're
was a good
welcome. And
day.
If the Maloofs had any guts and courtesy, they would have just gotten Vladi Divac over to Vegas, cigarette hanging out of his mouth to teach you that lesson. That would
That's
have
right.
been
Yeah, you could
that.
have, I don't know. It was one of those things. It's just egos, right? It's just a big ego and a thin skin. And those two don't go well together, you
No,
know.
they don't. You happy with the move to Vegas on the way out?
Yeah, I'm liking Vegas. Vegas is more, it's easier than LA. It's more relaxed.
Yeah.
I'm up in Summerlin at the base of the Red Rock Mountains. It's beautiful and stuff. I'll always love LA. Listen, I was in LA 40 years. I loved LA. I had a great time, experienced all the different stuff. And then I just said, I'm gonna kick back. I'm gonna take it easier. I spent some time here. Listen, I got a giant dog. He's at my foot right now. I got a 175-pound Great Dane. So I had a Vegas gig, got an Airbnb, stayed in Vegas rather than on the strip, stayed out here in summer. And I was like, man, this is kind of nice. And I started walking my dog around, seeing all these parks and green spaces and just the infrastructure is nice. I was like, I can do this. So here I am. I've been here a few months. I still like it. I still go back to LA a lot. I still go back and work and got friends there and stuff like that. I'm not one of those people that's going to leave LA and trash LA. I just can't. I can't. I've had too many good experiences, too many good memories. It's like a peaceful parting with an ex, which I know a lot about, Trey. I know a lot about that. Never
Well,
been married, got a lot of exes. Uh, that we'll do that
there's
next
a few
show.
comedians in Austin who had bad breakups with LA and have no love lost there too. So it all balances out, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. Listen, even living in LA, it was the popular thing. I lived in LA 40 years. I moved there in 1980. And it was always, I hate LA. That was, people said that because it's like, yeah, you're supposed to say that. But in truth, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. So how much do you really hate it? Traffic sucks and a lot of, stuff like that just went downhill and got worse. Like I lived in LA long enough to complain about people moving to LA. It's like, I remember when the 405 used to move before you clowns got here. Yeah, I lived there long enough for that. But I had a good time. It was a good run. It was a good run. Now I'm starting Vegas. So far, so good. A little warm here, but it's okay. The funniest thing to me in Vegas, people complain about the heat. It's like, really? So you're in the desert in the summertime and it's hot? Well, I'll be damned. Thank you for cluing me in.
Yeah, well, the good news for you is you're going to be ready for the triple digit temperatures here in Austin this weekend. He is Alonzo Bodden, going to be here in Austin at the Comedy Mothership Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Just check. There's actually stump tickets left to both shows Friday, both shows Saturday, and the show on Sunday right now. That is not going to be the case by this weekend. I highly recommend you go to comedymothership.com to snag those tickets. Alonzo is hilarious material he's been working on. He's also very quick, does a lot of current event stuff too. I'm actually going to try and get to that Sunday show. So yeah, comedymothership.com and check out his previous work at his website, alonzobodden.com. That's Bodden. Alonzo, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for the time today.
Trey, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on, and I hope to see you Sunday night.
If you're still watching or listening right now, I'd greatly appreciate you subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or elsewhere. And please do like today's episode. Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. Talk to you next time on Books on Pod.